I woke up with the taste of asphalt and copper in my mouth. My lungs burned. Every nerve in my body screamed that I had just died. But the ceiling above me was white and clean, not the gray of a morgue. The sheets beneath my fingers were silk, not a hospital gown. I shot upright, gasping, my hand flying to my chest. No blood, no shattered ribs, no crushed metal around my legs. I was whole. I was alive. And then the calendar on my nightstand hit me like a freight train. Monday, May 25th, 2026. My wedding day. The day I was supposed to marry Sophia Blackwood. The day Marcus swapped her for Elena Cross. The day the whole nightmare began. My hands trembled as I swung my legs over the side of the bed. I stared at the golden band of my watch. 9 months of hell. That's what my past life had become after this day. The fake fraud charges, the public humiliation, the divorce papers I never signed, and then the crash. A faulty brake line, they said. An accident, they said. But I remembered too much. The smirk on Marcus' face at my funeral. The look he gave me when I was handcuffed, being led out of the courthouse. The way he clapped me on the shoulder at the charity gala, whispering, "You should have stayed the spare. Little brother." I had died thinking it was over, but death wasn't the end. It was the reset button, and I had been given a second chance to play this game the right way. The morning sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, casting long golden rectangles across the marble floor. I stood at the window, staring at the Manhattan skyline, and felt the ghost of every past decision cling to my skin. In my previous life, I had walked through this day like a lamb. I had trusted Marcus. I had believed him when he said he was looking out for me. I had accepted Elena Cross into my life without question because I was too blind, too naive, too willing to see the best in everyone. That version of me was dead, quite literally. So, I took a long shower, letting the hot water pound against my back. And I thought about every piece of the puzzle Marcus had assembled so carefully. The merger with Blackwood Shipping was supposed to be my ticket into the family business. A strategic marriage to Sophia Blackwood, arranged by our fathers, designed to unite two empires. Sophia was intelligent, elegant, and sharp. In the past life, I had grown to care for her genuinely, but Marcus had wanted her, not out of love, but out of envy. He couldn't stand that I was getting something he didn't have, so he had engineered the swap. Elena Cross was presented as his engagement, a minor arrangement with some forgotten branch of the Vance family, and with a few well-placed words at the pre-wedding brunch. Marcus would convince everyone that he was selflessly giving up his match for mine. A noble sacrifice, the older brother taking the lesser bride, so the younger could have the better one. The family would applaud his magnanimity. My father would nod approvingly, and I would be left with a woman I didn't know, married to a stranger, set up for a fall. Except this time. I knew this time I had the advantage no one could predict. I dried off and dressed in my tailored charcoal suit, checking my reflection in the mirror. The face looking back at me was the same one I had worn at 28. Still young, still unmarked by the horrors of the past life. But the eyes were different. They held a weight that no one would understand. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Ready for the big day. Little brother. See you at the brunch. I have a surprise for you." I smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "Can't wait," I typed back. The game was on. The pre-wedding brunch was held at the Vance family estate in Westchester, a sprawling Georgian mansion surrounded by manicured lawns and ancient oaks. The grand ballroom had been decorated with white roses and gold accents, the tables laden with champagne towers and towers of pastry. The cream of New York society filled the room, sipping mimosas and gossiping in hushed tones. I walked in with my game face on, humble, slightly nervous, the appropriate expression for a groom on his wedding day. My father, Richard Vance, stood by the fireplace, holding court with Alexander Blackwood and 2 other businessmen. His gray eyes flicked to me, and he gave a curt nod, approval without warmth. That was Richard Vance's specialty. My mother, Victoria, floated through the room in a pale pink Chanel suit, air-kissing her way through the guest list. And there was Marcus, tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a navy buy-in suit, his dark hair perfectly swept back, a glass of champagne in his hand. He spotted me immediately and raised his glass with a dazzling smile. Liam, there he is, the groom. He crossed the room and clapped me on the shoulder, his grip firm and brotherly. I felt the warmth of his palm through my jacket and I braced myself. The first touch, the floodgates opened. Perfect timing. Look at him, so eager, so trusting. He has no idea what's coming. By lunchtime, Sophia will be mine, and he'll be stuck with the cross girl. The board will see me as the selfless brother. Father will reward me, and when the investigation into the cross settlement comes out, Liam will take the fall. Clean, elegant. This is going to be beautiful. I kept my face neutral. My smile never wavered, but inside, my blood ran cold. The cross settlement investigation. That was something I hadn't known from the past life. Marcus' plan went deeper than I had realized. He wasn't just taking my fiancée and setting me up for fraud. He was using Elena Cross herself as the lever to destroy me. The brunch continued, a blur of polite conversation and hollow congratulations. I played my part perfectly. I laughed at Marcus' jokes. I accepted handshakes from men whose names I already knew would be worthless. And then Marcus called for everyone's attention. He stood at the head of the room, champagne glass raised high, his expression shifting to one of solemn sincerity. I have an announcement to make, he said, and the room fell silent. As you all know, today was supposed to be the day Liam married Sophia Blackwood, a beautiful union between two great families. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. But I've been doing a lot of thinking about family, about sacrifice, about what truly matters. He turned to look at me, his eyes glistening with manufactured emotion. Elena Cross is my fiancée, a wonderful young woman from a fine branch of the Vance lineage. And when I look at her, I see a woman who deserves a husband who can give her everything. But I also see my brother standing here about to marry a woman he barely knows. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw my mother's hand fly to her chest. My father's face hardened into stone. Marcus continued, his voice breaking just slightly. A masterful performance. So, I've made a decision. I'm going to step aside. I'm going to marry Sophia Blackwood myself because I believe we can build something great together. And Liam will marry Elena because he deserves a fresh start. A new beginning. A love that isn't bound by business contracts. The room erupted in murmurs. I heard someone whisper, "What a noble sacrifice." Another voice, "Marcus is such a good brother." I felt the spotlight on me, all eyes watching for my reaction. And I did what I was supposed to do. I looked shocked, hurt, betrayed. I let my shoulders sag. I let my jaw tighten. I played the part of the younger brother who had just been outmaneuvered. And I let Marcus savor his victory. Then I looked toward the back of the room where a woman stood alone near the entrance. She was wearing a simple cream dress, her dark hair pulled back, her expression unreadable. Elena Cross. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I felt a jolt, not from her appearance, though she was striking in a quiet, understated way, but from the thought that crossed my mind unbidden. She looked like she was calculating something. And then Marcus was at my side, guiding me toward her. "Liam, let me introduce you to your future wife." He took my wrist and placed my hand in hers. She had long fingers, cool skin, and as our palms touched, I heard it, her voice sharp and clear in my mind, as if she were whispering directly into my skull. "This is perfect. Now I can get close to Marcus without anyone suspecting a thing." I almost stumbled. I almost let my mask slip. But I caught myself and forced a smile. "Elena," I said, my voice steady. "It's a pleasure to meet you." She smiled back. Her eyes were dark, watchful. "The pleasure is mine. Liam, I hope we can make the best of this arrangement. He looks weak, easy to manipulate. This is almost too convenient." I held her hand a moment longer than necessary, just to hear more. But her thoughts had gone quiet, as if she had sensed something. She pulled her hand back gently, and the connection severed. I stood there in the center of the buzzing ballroom, my brother's arm around my shoulder, my new fiancée's dark eyes watching me from across the room. And I realized something that made my pulse quicken with excitement. Elena Cross wasn't a victim. She was a player, and her target was Marcus Vance. I just had to figure out why. The wedding itself was a blur of white flowers, organ music, and hollow promises. I stood at the altar in St. Patrick's Cathedral, the ancient stone walls towering above us, and watched Elena walk down the aisle. She moved with a quiet grace that seemed almost rehearsed, her wedding dress simple yet elegant, a contrast to the extravagance of the Vance family's preferred aesthetic. I had chosen simplicity, no elaborate ceremony, no 1,000 guests, a small intimate service by Vance standards, with barely 200 of our closest family and business associates. Marcus had insisted on organizing everything. Of course, he was the magnanimous brother, the selfless caretaker, smoothing over the scandal of the last-minute fiancé swap with a seamless transition. Everyone commended his efficiency. No one questioned his motives. I watched him from the altar as he stood near the front, Sophia Blackwood on his arm. Sophia was beautiful, truly, with her honey blonde hair and intelligent gray eyes. She looked elegant in a navy dress that complemented Marcus' suit perfectly, but I saw the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself slightly apart from him, as if instinctively guarding herself in my past life. I had recognized that tension too late. Sophia had tried to warn me a week after the wedding. She had sent a message through a private courier, something about Marcus' financial dealings, but I never received it. Marcus had intercepted it, and by the time I learned the truth, the noose was already tightening around my neck. I filed that memory away this time. I would be ready. The priest spoke the words, "Do you, Liam, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" I looked at Elena. She looked back at me, her expression serene, her eyes unreadable, but I had already heard enough in that first handshake to know she was wearing a mask as carefully crafted as my own. "I do," I said. The ring slid onto her finger. The priest pronounced us husband and wife, and the cathedral erupted in applause as we turned to walk back down the aisle. My hand brushed against Elena's wrist just briefly. The contact was fleeting, but enough for her. Thoughts to flicker through my mind. Phase 1 complete. Now I need access to Vance Holdings' restricted files. Liam is the key. Keep him close. Keep him trusting. I kept my eyes forward and my smile fixed. Phase 1. She had phases. This was getting more interesting by the minute. The reception was held at the Waldorf Historie, a gilded affair with a 12-piece orchestra and a 5-course dinner. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, all while cataloging every piece of information I could gather. A touch of my mother's hand at the head table. Thank God the Blackwood girl is still in the family. And Liam, well, the cross girl will keep him out of trouble. A brief squeeze of my father's arm during his toast. Marcus handled this beautifully. Liam will never be leadership material, but at least he's married off cleanly. Now I can focus on Marcus' succession without distraction. The contempt was breathtaking. In the past life, I had known my father favored Marcus. I had accepted it, internalized it, let it shape my sense of self-worth. But hearing his thoughts directly, stripped of the polite fiction of fatherly affection, was something else entirely. It was cold, clinical. I was a chess piece to him, a loose end that had been neatly tied. I caught Marcus watching me from across the ballroom, his arm around Sophia's waist, a champagne flute in his free hand. He raised his glass to me, a toast to the loser. I raised mine back, and then I did something he didn't expect. I smiled, a real smile, because I knew something he didn't. I knew that Sophia Blackwood would eventually see through his facade. I knew that Elena Cross was playing her own game, and I knew that Marcus Vance's perfect plan was built on a foundation of lies that were about to crack. Elena appeared at my side, her hand settling gently on my arm. The contact sent a ripple of her thoughts through me. He's watching us. Good. Let him think we're happy. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, a gesture of marital affection that was entirely performative. "Enjoying yourself, husband?" she asked, her voice soft and warm. "Immensely," I replied. "It's not every day a man gets a second chance." She gave me a curious look, her head tilting slightly. "Second chance." I covered smoothly. "A second chance at happiness," I said, gesturing vaguely at the celebration around us. With a beautiful woman by my side. I'm a lucky man. Asterisk. He's not as stupid as I thought. Interesting. I'll need to be careful. Her thought process was analytical, calculating. She was reevaluating me, slotting me into a new category. Good. Let her wonder. Let her doubt her initial assessment. The more she underestimated me, the more she tried to figure me out, the less attention she would pay to the real game I was playing. Dinner was served. Speeches were made. Marcus gave a toast that was almost unbearable in its sanctimony, praising my new beginning and expressing his joy at seeing me married to Elena. I clapped along with everyone else, my face a mask of gratitude. But I was watching and I was listening, and when Marcus placed his hand on my shoulder, offering a brotherly embrace, I heard his triumphant thoughts. One down. By this time next month, he'll be drowning in debt and scandal, and no one will suspect a thing. The evening wore on. Eventually, the reception wound down. The guests began to trickle out, and Elena and I were ushered into a black Rolls-Royce that would take us to our honeymoon suite at the Vance family penthouse. We sat in silence for most of the drive, the city lights sliding past the tinted windows. I could feel the pull of her thoughts, the way they hummed beneath the surface, just out of reach unless I made contact. She was thinking hard, running through calculations, planning her next move. I wanted to know what she was planning. I wanted to reach out and touch her hand and eavesdrop on her scheming. But I held back patience. The night was young. The Rolls pulled up at the Vance Tower, a 60-story glass monument in Midtown Manhattan. The penthouse took up the entire top 2 floors. The elevator ride was silent, the doors opening directly into a lavish living room with sweeping views of the city. Elena stepped out first, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She walked to the window and stood there, her back to me, her silhouette framed against the glittering skyline. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. "The view it is." I agreed, but I wasn't looking at the view. I was watching her. She turned to face me, a faint smile on her lips. "Well, Liam, we're married now. What happens next?" I met her gaze and held it. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 seconds. Her thoughts rippled into view, fragmented and quick. What is he doing? Why is he looking at me like that? He's not supposed to be this sharp. I let the silence stretch, then smiled. "I think the better question is, what do you want to happen next? Elena, this is your story, too." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "He's testing me. Unexpected. I want us to be partners." She said carefully, "This marriage wasn't our choice, but we can make it work. Trust, respect, honesty. That's what I believe in." I almost laughed. Honesty. She was an undercover operative who had just married me to get close to my brother. And she was talking about honesty. But I nodded. "I agree completely. Trust and honesty. He's lying. I can feel it. But he's a good liar. Better than Marcus thinks. This is going to be more complicated than I anticipated." We stood there, 2 strangers bound by a contract neither of us had chosen. Each of us wearing masks we had perfected over years of survival. The air between us crackled with unspoken secrets and hidden agendas. And in that moment, I made a decision. I would play her game. I would be the doting, trusting husband she expected me to be. I would let her think she was manipulating me. And all the while, I would be listening to every thought that crossed her mind, unraveling every thread of her plan and using it to weave my own victory. The first move had been Marcus, but the last move would be mine. The first night of our marriage passed without incident. Elena retreated to the master bedroom while I took the study, claiming I had work to review. The penthouse was large enough that we could live separate lives within its walls, and for now that suited both of us. I lay on the leather couch in the study, staring at the ceiling, replaying every thought I had caught from Elena and Marcus. The pieces were falling into place, but there were gaps. Elena was investigating Marcus, but for whom she mentioned phases. Phase 1 was marriage to me. Phase 2 was access to Vance Holdings. I needed to know more. I needed to touch her again. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen already dressed in a crisp white blouse and tailored black pants. She was making coffee, moving through the space with efficient, deliberate gestures. She looked up when I entered. Good morning. Morning. I poured myself a cup and sat across from her at the breakfast bar. She was reading something on her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. I studied her in the morning light. She looked younger, softer around the edges, but there was a hardness in her eyes that spoke of experience beyond her years. We should discuss our living arrangements, she said, setting down her phone. This penthouse is generous, but we'll need to coordinate schedules. I work remotely, mostly consulting. You have the Vance office. We'll need to set boundaries. She said it like she was drafting a contract. Precise, professional. Everything about her screamed control. I nodded. I agree. I typically leave by 8, return by 7. Weekends are flexible. Good. I'll handle mornings. You handle evenings. Fair. She reached across the counter to pass me the sugar bowl, and her fingers brushed mine. I felt the familiar tingle, and her thoughts flooded in. Asterisk. He's cooperative. Almost too cooperative. The file on Liam Vance says he's passive, indecisive, easily led. But he's not showing any of those traits. Either the file is wrong or he's hiding something. Asterisk. I took the sugar bowl and smiled. Thanks. The file is wrong. Definitely wrong. I need to dig deeper, but carefully. If he's playing his own game, I need to know what it is before I commit to phase 2. She pulled her hand back and returned to her coffee, her expression perfectly neutral. I filed away every detail. She had a file on me. Of course, she did. She'd been researching her mark. But the file was outdated. It was based on the old Liam, the one who had been blind and trusting. The new Liam was a blank page she couldn't read. I spent the morning at the Vance Holdings office, a sleek tower in the financial district. My office was on the 32nd floor, a corner space with views of the Hudson River. It was modest compared to Marcus' penthouse corner office on the 40th floor, but I didn't need a bigger office. I needed information. I had spent the first day of my past marriage drifting, allowing Marcus to maneuver pieces into place. This time, I started moving immediately. I called Jake Morrison, my best friend from law school and the only person in my past life who had believed me. He ran a small private investigation firm, and he was brilliant at uncovering the things people wanted to keep hidden. Liam. His voice crackled through the speaker. Congratulations on the wedding. I heard about the last-minute change. Yeah. It was a surprise, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Can you meet me for lunch? I need to discuss something. Business or pleasure? Business. There was a pause. I'll be at Oreo's at noon. Orazio's was a quiet Italian restaurant in Topeka, the kind of place where you could have a conversation without being overheard. Jake was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner booth, nursing an espresso. He was lean and sharp with perpetually assessing eyes and the kind of face that was easy to forget. A useful trait for a PI. Congratulations again, he said as I slid into the booth. I mean it even if the circumstances are unusual. Unusual is an understatement. I ordered a glass of water and leaned forward. Jake, I need you to look into someone. Elena Cross. His eyebrow rose. Your wife? Yes. I need to know everything about her. Her background. Her family. Any connections to the Vance family. Anything unusual. Jake didn't ask why. That was one of the reasons I trusted him. I'll start digging. Give me 3 days. One more thing. I need you to look into the Cross Settlement Trust. There's a trust connected to the Cross family, and I suspect there's something hidden in it. Jake's eyes narrowed. What kind of something? The kind that someone might use to destroy me. He nodded slowly. I'll put my best people on it. I left the meeting feeling more grounded. In my past life, I had been isolated. Jake had tried to help, but I had pushed him away, too proud and too blind to see the trap closing around me. This time I was building my network early. I returned to the office and found a message from my father's assistant. Richard Vance wanted to see me for a clock sharp. I knew this meeting in the past life. It was the first time my father had told me in no uncertain terms that I was a disappointment, that Marcus was the heir, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps I was given. I walked into his corner office at exactly 4. Richard Vance sat behind an enormous mahogany desk, his silver hair immaculate, his suit worth more than most people's cars. He didn't look up when I entered. Sit. I sat. I want to talk about your role in the company going forward." He finally raised his eyes to meet mine. They were cold, analytical, the same eyes that had looked at me with contempt at my own wedding. "You're married now. That means you need to be productive. I'm putting you in charge of the cross-trust portfolio. There's a small fund, about 15 million, tied to your wife's family. Manage it well and we'll talk about bigger responsibilities." He said it like he was offering me a promotion, but I knew the truth. The cross-trust was a poison chalice. The irregularities in its ledgers were the trap Marcus would use to frame me. In the past life, I had taken it willingly, grateful for any responsibility, and it had been my undoing. This time, I had to accept it without arousing suspicion. "Thank you, Father. I'll handle it carefully." "See that you do. Marcus has big plans for the Blackwood merger. I don't want your incompetence to interfere." The meeting lasted 8 minutes. I walked out with the cross-trust portfolio as a millstone around my neck. But this time, I knew exactly where the fault lines were. That night, I returned to the penthouse to find Elena in the living room, a laptop open on the coffee table, a glass of red wine at her elbow. She looked up when I entered. "How was your first day as a married man?" "Productive. I got a new portfolio to manage the cross-trust." I stopped. I hadn't mentioned it. "How did you know?" She smiled, a thin, knowing smile. "I have my sources. And before you ask, yes, I know it's a mess. The trust was set up 30 years ago and hasn't been properly audited in a decade. My mother's family's money tangled up in a dozen shell corporations." I sat down across from her. "You seem to know a lot about it." "I should. I've been trying to untangle it for years." Her eyes met mine, and I felt the familiar pull. I reached out and took her wine glass, intentionally grazing her fingers. Her thoughts spilled out. "He's suspicious. Good. Let him be. The trust is what will bring Marcus down. I've been waiting for this moment. If Liam plays along, we can expose everything. But if he's loyal to Marcus, I'll have to remove him." I handed the glass back. "Then maybe we can work on it together," I said. "Untangle it. I could use a partner who knows the terrain." She studied me for a long moment, too eager. "What's his angle?" But she nodded. "I'd like that." We sat in the soft glow of the penthouse lights, two strangers circling each other, each waiting for the other to make a mistake. I took a sip of my water and smiled. She had no idea how much I already knew. The week that followed was a careful dance of feigned normalcy and quiet observation. I went to the office. I reviewed the cross-trust portfolio. I attended meetings where Marcus played the gracious older brother and I played the grateful younger one. And every interaction was an opportunity for intelligence gathering. At a Tuesday board meeting, I sat 2 seats away from Marcus. When he leaned over to hand me a document, his fingers brushed my sleeve. "The forged invoices are in place by end of next quarter. The audit will flag them and every trail will lead to Liam's desk. Clean. Simple. Done." I thanked him for the document and made a mental note. Forged invoices. End of next quarter. I had time, but not much. On Wednesday, my mother invited me to lunch. It was a performance of maternal concern. But I knew the subtext. She wanted to assess Elena to make sure the cross girl wasn't going to embarrass the family. I let her talk, and when she touched my hand across the table, her thoughts surfaced. "At least she's presentable. Not ugly. But her family has no real money. This is going to hurt our social standing for years. Marcus had better make the Blackwood connection worth it." I smiled and told her Elena was adjusting well. She didn't need to know the truth. On Thursday, Jake called with his preliminary findings. Elena Cross has a clean record, no criminal history, graduated top of her class from Georgetown, master's in international relations from LSE. Worked for a consulting firm that does a lot of government contract work. Nothing obviously suspicious, but her employment history has gaps. 6-month gaps that aren't explained. And her consulting firm is a front registered in Delaware. No physical office. No listed employees. It's a shell. Can you trace who owns it? Working on it. The paper trail leads to Hong Kong. Then goes dark. Keep digging. One more thing. The cross-trust. It's not just messy. It's deliberately obfuscated. Someone has been actively hiding transactions, and some of those transactions connect to accounts controlled by Vance Holdings. I leaned back in my chair. Marcus was using the trust to launder money, and he planned to pin it on me. Thanks, Jake. Stay on it. That evening, I found Elena in the study surrounded by spreadsheets. She was deep in concentration, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I stood in the doorway and watched her for a moment. The pattern is emerging. Marcus is funneling money through the cross trust, then routing it through the charity. If I can trace it back to the source, I can prove the fraud, but I need access to the Vance Holdings internal ledgers. And the only person who can get me that access is Liam. Cleared my throat. She looked up startled. Sorry, I didn't hear you come in. You were focused. What are you working on? She hesitated. The trust. I found some irregularities. Show me. I crossed the room and stood beside her. Looking at the screen, she had mapped out a flowchart of transactions, a web of arrows and account numbers. I reached out and pointed at one note on the screen. This account here connects to a shell company called Meridian Holdings. She looked at me sharply. How do you know that? I had learned it from reading her thoughts the day before, but I couldn't say that. I did my own research. The cross-trust has been flagging on internal audits for years. Meridian shows up in at least 6 transactions. She stared at me. He's been digging without me. That's either very good or very bad. Why didn't you tell me you were looking into it? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. Because I didn't know if I could trust you. I said honestly. And now I'm starting to think we might have the same goal. She held my gaze 3 seconds for her thoughts flickered. He's not lying. He really does want to expose the corruption. But is he doing it for the right reasons, or does he have his own agenda? Asterisk. What's your goal? Liam, she asked. Why are you digging into your own family's trust? I considered my answer carefully. I couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet, because I don't want to be my brother's scapegoat. I said, I've seen the way he operates, the way he manipulates, and I'm not going to let him destroy me. She processed that. That matches what I've observed. He's afraid of Marcus, but fear can be useful. Fear makes people cooperative. She nodded slowly. I think we can help each other. I think so, too. We shook hands across the table. Her palm was warm against mine. He's in phase 2 can begin. But I still need to verify everything he tells me. Trust, but verify. We spent the next 2 hours working together, cross-referencing data, tracing transactions. It was the first time I felt like we were actually collaborating, even if both of us were withholding the full truth. By midnight, we had made significant progress. We had identified 6 accounts that showed clear patterns of money laundering. The funds flowed from several Vance subsidiaries into the cross-trust, then out to Meridian Holdings, and from there they disappeared into offshore accounts. Whoever set this up knew what they were doing, Elena said, rubbing her eyes. But they made one mistake. What's that? They used the same lawyer for all the shell corporations, a man named Harold Vance. I blinked. Harold Vance. Our uncle. The one who died 5 years ago. Yes, he was the family lawyer. Handled all the trusts and estates. Elena leaned back. Which means either your brother is forging your dead uncle's signature to create these shell companies, or your uncle was in on it before he died. Marcus is thorough. I said slowly, but he's not stupid enough to forge Uncle Harold's signature on documents that could be traced. If Harold was involved, then the conspiracy goes deeper than just Marcus. Elena finished. We sat in silence, the weight of the implications settling over us. If Uncle Harold was involved, then there was a possibility that my father knew that the corruption was not just Marcus doing, but systemic. That the entire Vance empire was built on a foundation of fraud and deception. Elena looked at me, and for the first time her mask slipped. I saw genuine concern in her eyes. Liam, I need to tell you something about who I am and why I'm really here. I held my breath. This was the moment. I'm not just some random woman your brother found to pawn off on you. I've been investigating Vance Holdings for nearly a year for a client who lost everything because of your family's business practices. Who's the client? I can't tell you that yet, but I can tell you that what we're uncovering here goes far beyond the cross-trust. It goes to the heart of the Vance empire, and if we're not careful, we're both going to end up dead. Her words hung in the air. I knew she meant it. I had lived through that death once. Then we'd better be very careful, I said. The morning after our shared revelation. I woke before dawn. The city was still dark outside the penthouse windows. The sky a deep purple fading into gray. I lay still, replaying Elena's words. I'm not just some random woman. Our client lost everything. This goes to the heart of the Vance empire. She had almost told me everything, but she had held back the key piece. Who her client was I needed to know. So, I devised a test. I made coffee. I took a shower. I dressed in my usual dark suit. And when I walked into the kitchen, Elena was already there. Same as always, phone in hand, coffee brewed. You're up early, she said. Couldn't sleep thinking about what you said last night. She nodded, her expression guarded. It's a lot to process it is, but I've been thinking, if we're going to work together, I need to know who I'm really working with. No more masks. I reached across the counter and took her hand. I need to know your client's name. The contact was immediate. Her thoughts rushed through me like a current. He's pushing too fast. I can't tell him about Mr. Chun yet. Not until I'm sure he's not working for Marcus. But if I refuse, I'll lose his trust. Compromise. Give him something real. But not everything. She squeezed my hand back and her thoughts clarified. Tell him about Beijing. Tell him about the chemical shipment. That will be enough to prove I'm serious without exposing Mr. Chun. My client is a man named Chini, she said slowly, a Chinese businessman. His daughter died 2 years ago from a drug overdose. The drug was laced with a chemical compound that traces back to a Vance Holdings subsidiary. I kept my face neutral, but my pulse quickened. The chemical connection that was bigger than I had anticipated. Which subsidiary? Vance Chemical Industries. It's not publicly listed. It's a private holding within the Vance Group. They manufacture industrial solvents. But according to my investigation, they also manufacture precursor chemicals that can be used in illegal drug production. Her voice hardened. Mr. Chen's daughter didn't overdose on street drugs. She was poisoned by a product your family's company manufactured and sold through intermediaries. The DEA is investigating, but the trail has been deliberately buried. I released her hand. Processing the chemical connection explained why Elena was so deeply invested. This wasn't a simple financial investigation. This was personal. You have proof of all this. Some enough to know I'm right, but not enough to take it to the authorities without exposing my client's involvement. And if we could get more proof. She looked at me sharply. Then we could end the Vance empire. That was exactly what I wanted. But I couldn't let her know how much. Not yet. Then let's get more proof. The first step was gaining access to Vance Chemical Industries' internal records. That meant going to the subsidiary's headquarters in New Jersey. But I couldn't do it openly. If Marcus found out I was sniffing around his most profitable asset, he would shut me down immediately. I needed a cover story. I called Elena from the office. I'm going to New Jersey tomorrow. Vance Chemical has a quarterly review meeting. I've been assigned to attend as a favor to Marcus. You. Why you? Because Marcus wants me out of the way. The meeting is in Trenton. It'll take all day. He thinks I'm too incompetent to notice anything useful. Is he wrong? I almost laughed. He's very wrong. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I read through every file I could access on Vance Chemical Industries' past life. Knowledge filled in the gaps. I remembered the chemical scandal breaking just before my arrest. But now I had the chance to see the evidence before it was hidden. The next morning, I drove to Trenton. The Vance Chemical plant was a sprawling complex of gray buildings and smokestacks on the outskirts of the city. I checked in at the security desk and was escorted to the conference room on the 3rd floor. The meeting was exactly what I expected. A parade of middle managers presenting quarterly figures, discussing production targets and avoiding any mention of the subsidiary's less savory operations. I sat quietly taking notes, asking the occasional innocent question, and all the while, I watched, cataloged. I made mental maps of the facility. During a coffee break, I excused myself and wandered down a long corridor. I passed a locked door marked restricted access, authorized personnel only. A keypad glowed beside it. I didn't have the code, but I had something better. A man in a white lab coat approached from the opposite direction, a badge clipped to his lapel. He looked at me with mild curiosity. "Can I help you?" "Just looking for the restroom," I said. "Is back the way you came." "Thanks." I stepped aside to let him pass as he reached for the keypad. His sleeve brushed my jacket. His thoughts bled through. Code 4839. Same as always. Why do they even bother changing it every month if it's always the same pattern? I smiled and walked back to the conference room. Code 4839, that was going to be useful. The meeting ended at 4. I drove back to the city, my mind racing with possibilities. The restricted section of Vance Chemical contained the records I needed. Production logs, shipping manifests, customer lists. If I could get inside, I could find the evidence linking Vance Chemical to the drug that killed Mr. Chen's daughter. But breaking in was risky if I was caught. Marcus would have the excuse he needed to destroy me. That evening, I met Jake at a dive bar in Hell's Kitchen. I filled him in on what I had found. Vance Chemical is the key. I said if I can get their shipping records, I can trace the precursor chemicals to the intermediaries who sold them to the drug labs. Jake whistled low. That's deep water. Liam, if Marcus is running chemical precursors to illegal manufacturers, you're talking federal crimes. I know. And you're sure about this? I'm sure. Jake nursed his beer. I've been digging into Elena's employer. The Shell Corporation traces to a holding company in Hong Kong called Dragon's Gate Holdings. That holding company is owned by Chun Wei. Mr. Chen. You know him? Elena mentioned him. He's her client. Jake nodded slowly. Chenny is not just a businessman. He used to be in Chinese intelligence. He's connected to the Ministry of State Security. If he's investigating Vance Chemical, it's not just about his daughter. It's about something bigger. I absorbed that Elena's investigation wasn't just personal vengeance. It had geopolitical implications. Stay on it, Jake. I need to know everything about Cheney. I went home that night and found Elena in her usual spot. The living room bathed in the glow of her laptop screen. I sat down across from her. I found something today. Advanced chemical. She looked up. Alert. What? The restricted records section. I know the access code, and I'm going to get inside. Her eyes widened. That's insane. If you're caught, I won't be caught, but I need your help. I need you to create a diversion. Draw attention away from New Jersey for a few hours. She studied me. He's serious. He's actually going to break into his own family's chemical plant. This is either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen. What kind of diversion? I don't know. Something that makes Marcus focus on New York. Problem with the trust. A leak to the press. Something that forces him to stay in the city. She nodded slowly. I think I can arrange that. Then we have a plan. For the first time since the wedding, I felt like I was making real progress. The diversion came faster than I expected. Elena, I learned, was remarkably resourceful. 2 days after our conversation, a story appeared in the financial section of the New York Times. Questions raised over Vance Foundation Charities tax filings. The article was brief, buried on page 6, but it mentioned the Vance Foundation by name and questioned the transparency of its charitable donations. Marcus exploded. I heard him through the walls of his office. As I walked past, his voice raised, objects being thrown. The foundation was his pet project, his public face. Any scrutiny of it threatened to expose the money-laundering operation he was running through it. He spent the next 2 days in damage control mode, meeting with lawyers, PR consultants, and board members. He barely noticed when I left the office early on Thursday. I drove to Trenton again, this arriving in the late afternoon. The plan was winding down for the day, the shift change, creating a steady flow of workers leaving and arriving. I parked in the visitor lot and walked to the main entrance with the confident stride of someone who belonged there. The guard at the front desk recognized me from the quarterly meeting. Mr. Vance, back so soon. Forgot some documents in the conference room. I said with a shrug. My assistant is going to kill me. He waved me through with a chuckle. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, moving quickly. The restricted section was on the second floor at the end of the east wing. The corridor was empty. The keypad glowed. I punched in 4839. The lock clicked. I pushed the door open and slipped inside. The room was a records archive. Floor-to-ceiling shelves of bound ledgers and file boxes. A single computer terminal sat on a desk in the corner. I moved to the terminal and powered it on. No password. The arrogance of people who thought their security was impenetrable. I navigated to the shipping records and began to search. The data was extensive years of shipping manifests, customer lists, production logs. I searched for chemicals flagged by the DEA as controlled precursors. There they were. Tons of them shipped to companies in Southeast Asia, South America, and Eastern Europe. I cross-referenced the customer names against Elena's data. Several matched. I transferred the files to a USB drive I had brought. Working quickly, my heart pounding. I heard footsteps in the corridor. I froze. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Keypad beeped. The door swung open. Security guard stepped in and saw me. Mr. Vance. His voice was flat. Not hostile, but not friendly. This area is restricted. I know, I said, my voice steady. I'm conducting an internal audit. Father asked me to review the shipping records personally. The guard hesitated. I held his gaze, projecting confidence. You can call Richard Vance if you'd like to verify, but I'd prefer if you didn't interrupt me. I'm almost done. He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Finish up. I'll escort you out. I turned back to the terminal and finished copying the files. The USB drive felt like a live wire in my pocket. As I followed the guard out of the building, I drove home with my hands shaking on the wheel. I had the evidence. Now I just had to survive long enough to use it. I met Elena in the penthouse living room. She was pacing, clearly anxious. Did you get it? I held up the USB drive. Everything. Shipping records, customer lists, production logs. It's all here. Her face broke into a rare smile. This is it. This is what we need. Not yet. We need to analyze it. Build a case that's airtight. We spent the next 4 hours in the study, combing through the data. The picture that emerged was damning. Vance Chemical had been shipping controlled precursor chemicals to a network of intermediaries for years. The intermediaries then sold the chemicals to drug labs in Mexico, Colombia, and Southeast Asia. The money flowed back through a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts, eventually landing in accounts controlled by Vance Holdings. At the center of it all was Marcus. His signature was on dozens of documents. His handwriting appeared in the margins of shipping logs. His accounts received the largest payments. He's been running this operation for at least 5 years. Elena said, her voice hushed. This isn't just fraud. This is international drug trafficking. He's looking at life in prison. And my father? I asked. She zoomed in on a document. Your father's signature doesn't appear anywhere on these records, but someone in the upper management of Vance Holdings had to authorize the chemical sales without their approval. Marcus couldn't have routed the money. Uncle Harold. I said it comes back to him, but he's dead, which means either he was the one authorizing the shipments before he died or someone forged his signature after. I scrolled through the documents. There it was, a signature that matched Uncle Harold's dated 18 months after his death. So Marcus forged it. Elena said, probably with help. The signatures are good, almost too good. He had someone who knew Harold's handwriting well enough to replicate it. Someone in the family. We looked at each other. The unspoken implication hung in the air. My father, my mother, someone close enough to Uncle Harold to know his hand. We need to be careful. Elena said, if your father is involved, or if he knows, then we can't trust anyone in the Vance family. I nodded slowly. Then we keep this between us. Jake can help with the analysis, but no one else. Agreed. I looked at the clock. It was 3 in the morning. We had been working for hours and exhaustion was settling into my bones. But I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. I had the evidence. I had an ally. But the hardest part was yet to come. I had to bring down my brother without destroying myself in the process. And I had to do it before Marcus realized what I was doing and struck first. The Vance Foundation Gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was the social event of the spring season. A black tie affair attended by New York's elite charity board members and every business associate the Vance family had ever courted. Marcus had been planning it for months. It was his stage, his moment to shine, his opportunity to cement his reputation as a philanthropist and future CEO of Vance Holdings. I knew exactly what he was planning. He would unveil a new charity initiative, a children's education fund that would funnel money through his network of shell corporations, before disappearing into his offshore accounts. The public would applaud his generosity, the board would see his leadership, and the money would vanish into the black hole of his corruption. I arrived at the Met with Elena on my arm. She was dressed in a deep emerald gown that caught the light as she moved, her dark hair swept up, a string of pearls at her throat. She looked every inch the heir as she was pretending to be. I wore a black tuxedo tailored to perfection, a Vance family heirloom watch on my wrist. We were a picture of the perfect couple, and no one had any idea what we were planning. The grand hall was magnificent. Chandeliers hung from the soaring ceiling, casting warm light over marble floors and towering columns. Tables draped in white linen held centerpieces of white orchids. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The cream of New York society mingled and laughed and made deals in hushed tones. Marcus stood near the center of the room, surrounded by admirers. He was in his element, charming, magnetic, the center of attention. Sophia stood beside him, elegant in a silver gown, her smile fixed and professional. I watched them from across the room, my hand resting lightly on Elena's lower back. He looked so comfortable, Elena murmured. He's been rehearsing this moment his entire life. Well, let's see how comfortable he stays after my question. I had prepared something special, a question that seemed innocent but would plant a seed of doubt in everyone who heard it. I waited until the speeches began. Marcus took the podium, his voice warm and confident. He spoke about the foundation's mission, about the children who would benefit from his new education initiative, about the importance of giving back. The audience applauded. I clapped along, my face neutral when he opened the floor for questions. I raised my hand. Liam. He smiled, expecting a congratulatory comment. What's your question? I was just wondering, I said, my voice carrying, through the hall. Who audited the initial funding for the Children's Education Fund? The room went quiet. Marcus' smile flickered. The standard internal audit process. Of course. Same as all our charities. Of course. I'm just curious because when I reviewed the foundation's financial statements, I noticed the initial seed funding came from a trust called Meridian Holdings, and Meridian Holdings doesn't appear to have any audited financials. I was wondering if there was a third-party audit. I missed. I said it casually as if I were asking about the catering, but the implications were clear. Marcus' face tightened almost imperceptibly. It's a small trust. They use a private accounting firm. The audit is on file. Could you share the name of the firm? I'd love to review their methodology for my own education. I saw Alexander Blackwood turn to look at me. His eyes narrowed. Sophia's gaze shifted from me to Marcus, sharp and assessing. Marcus recovered quickly. Of course, I'll have my assistant send you the details. But the damage was done. I had planted the seed, and in a room full of sharks. Seeds of doubt were the most dangerous thing you could plant. After the speeches, I excused myself to the restroom. On my way back, I took a detour through the administrative corridor behind the main hall. I knew Marcus' office setup for events like this. He always had a temporary workspace, and he always left his briefcase in it. I found the door unlocked. His briefcase was on the desk. I opened it quickly, scanning the contents, documents, a tablet, and a small recording device already running. I froze. Marcus was recording conversations. Who was he recording and why? I heard voices approaching. I closed the briefcase and slipped out of the room just as Marcus and another man rounded the corner. They didn't see me, but I saw them. The other man was someone I didn't recognize. Tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of military or intelligence. They walked into the office and closed the door. I pressed my ear to the wood, straining to hear. Can't afford any more delays, the silver-haired man was saying. The shipment needs to leave next week. It will, Marcus replied. The charity will handle the routing. And your brother, he's not a threat. Trust me, I don't trust anyone. That's why I'm still alive. The man's voice was cold, clipped. Handle him or I will. I pulled away from the door, my heart hammering the shipment, the charity routing, the silver-haired man who didn't trust anyone. Marcus was in deeper than I had realized. He wasn't just laundering money, he was moving product, actual chemical product, out of the country. I walked back to the main hall, my mind racing. I found Elena near the bar holding a glass of champagne. She wasn't drinking. Her eyes met mine and she read my expression immediately. What happened? She murmured later. I said, but I need you to do something for me. Marcus' temporary office. It's 2 doors down from the main hall. There's a recording device in his briefcase. I need to know who he's recording. And why? Her eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. I'll find a way. The gala continued around us, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. I played my part, shaking hands, making small talk, all while watching Marcus from across the room. I saw him glance my way several times. His expression was controlled, but I saw the anger behind his eyes. My question had hit its mark. Near the end of the evening, Elena found me again. She pressed a small object into my hand. The recording device. She whispered. I swapped it with a decoy for my bag. He won't notice until he tries to play it back. And the original in my clutch. We'll review it at home. We left the gala at 11. Pleading exhaustion, the Rolls-Royce carried us through the darkened streets of Manhattan. And I held Elena's hand the entire way. Not for the contact, but to feel her thoughts. He's scared. I saw it in his eyes. But he's also determined. For the first time, I think we might actually pull this off. Mr. Chun will be pleased. I squeezed her hand. She looked at me, and for a moment, she almost smiled. Back at the penthouse, we gathered around Elena's laptop. She plugged in the recording device and played back the audio. Captured everything. Marcus' conversations throughout the evening, including his meeting with the silver-haired man. The shipment needs to leave next week. It will. The charity will handle the routing. And your brother, he's not a threat. Trust me. I don't trust anyone. That's why I'm still alive. Handle him or I will. Elena paused the recording. Who is that man? I don't know. But he's connected to the chemical shipments and he's not afraid of Marcus. Which means he's more dangerous. Exactly. We listened to the rest of the recording. There were conversations with board members, with a journalist, off-the-record flattery, and with Sophia. In that conversation, Marcus was charming, attentive, the perfect fiancé, but there was a tightness in his voice, a strain, as if he was performing, even when he thought no one was watching. He's recording everyone. Elena said, business associates, family, even Sophia. He's building a dossier insurance. If anyone threatens him, he has leverage or blackmail material. I nodded slowly. This changes things. If he's recording conversations, he might have evidence against other people, including us. Then we need to find his main archive. The device at the gala was just for events. He must have a central storage location, a safe, a server, his office, the One Advance Holdings. He keeps a personal safe behind the painting in his office. Elena looked at me sharply. How do you know that? I had learned it in the past life. Marcus had bragged about it once drunk at a family dinner. But I couldn't tell Elena that I grew up with him. I know all his hiding spots. She accepted the explanation, though I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. He knows too much, more than he should. Either he's been watching Marcus for years or he has a source I don't know about. Asterisk. We need to get into that safe, she said. Impossible. His office is locked, monitored by security cameras, and guarded by a personal assistant who doesn't leave before 8. Then we need to make him leave. How? She smiled. We make him think he's winning. The next morning, I went to the office early. Marcus was already there. His door closed. His assistant, a pinch-faced woman named Margaret, guarded the entrance with the ferocity of a Doberman. I smiled at her. Good morning, Margaret. Could you let my brother know I'd like to see him? He's in a meeting. I'll wait. I sat in the reception area and pulled out my phone. I had timed this carefully. Elena's diversion was about to begin. 10. Margaret's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face went pale. I'll tell him immediately. She knocked on Marcus's door and entered. A moment later, Marcus emerged, his expression dark. "What's going on?" "There's been a leak," Margaret said. "The financial details of the Children's Education Fund have been posted on an anonymous blog. The press is calling." Marcus' face contorted. "Who?" He looked at me. "Did you do this?" "Do what?" I asked innocently. "I've been sitting here the whole time." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and strode into his office. Slamming the door, Margaret followed, her heels clicking frantically. I sat back and waited. The leak was real. Elena had arranged it, posting the documents we had gathered to a site that couldn't be traced. It wasn't enough to destroy Marcus, but it was enough to send him into a panic. And a panicking Marcus made mistakes. Within an hour, he had left the office, heading to a crisis meeting with the Foundation's lawyers. I waited 60 seconds after his elevator left, then stood and walked toward his office. Margaret was on the phone, her voice strained. I knocked on the open door. Marcus asked me to grab a file from his desk. I said, "He needs it for the meeting." She covered the phone. "He didn't mention it. It just came up." He texted me. I showed her a blank screen. She hesitated, but the pressure of the crisis was visible on her face. "Be quick." I entered Marcus' office and went straight to the painting behind his desk. It was an abstract piece, a swirl of blues and golds. I lifted it off the wall. Behind it was a safe electronic keypad. I didn't know the combination, but I didn't need to. I pressed my palm against the cool metal and thought about Marcus. I remembered a conversation from the past life. Marcus drunk and boastful. "It's the same as everything. Little brother. The code to my safe is the same as the code to my first locker. 1423. Because I'm not creative. I'm consistent." I punched in 1423. The lock clicked. I opened the safe. Inside were files, flash drives, and several small recording devices. I grabbed everything, replaced the painting, and walked out. Margaret barely looked up. I made it to my own office, locked the door, and emptied the contents of the safe onto my desk. The files were damning records of every shipment, every payment, every shell corporation. The flash drives contained audio recordings of dozens of conversations, business associates, politicians, family members, and at the bottom of the pile was a file labeled Liam. I opened it. Contained forged documents, fabricated evidence, and a detailed timeline of how Marcus planned to frame me. The fraud, the audit, the arrest. It was all there in black and white. In the past life, I had never seen this file. I had gone to prison not knowing how thoroughly I had been set up. But now I held the blueprint of my own destruction in my hands. I photographed every page, uploaded every recording, and then carefully replaced everything in the safe. Marcus couldn't know I had taken anything. Not yet. I returned the painting to its exact position, locked the safe, and walked out of his office. Margaret didn't even look up from her phone. That evening, I showed Elena what I had found. She was speechless. He had a plan, a complete step-by-step plan to destroy you, and I was supposed to walk right into it. She looked at the timeline. The audit is scheduled for 6 weeks from now. The forged invoices are already in the system. The first signs of irregularities will appear in 3 weeks, which gives us 3 weeks to turn this around. Can we do it? I looked at her for the first time since the wedding. I allowed myself a genuine smile. We already have. Sophia Blackwood called me 3 days after the gala. Her message was short and cryptic. "We need to talk coffee. Dean and Duca on Broadway, Friday at 10. I arrived early and took a corner table with a view of the entrance. The coffee shop was busy but not crowded. The kind of place where you could have a private conversation without standing out. Sophia arrived at exactly 10, dressed in a cream trench coat and dark sunglasses. She removed the glasses as she sat down and I saw the strain in her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Your message sounded urgent." "It is." She ordered a black coffee and waited until the server left before speaking. "I've been doing some research on Marcus on the Vance Foundation on a lot of things." I sipped my espresso saying nothing. "You asked about the audit at the gala. That was deliberate, wasn't it?" I was curious. "You were planting a seed." I didn't deny it and it worked. She continued because I went home that night and started looking. I found things concerning things like what She leaned forward, her voice dropping, like the fact that Marcus has been withdrawing large sums from the Vance-Blackwood merger fund without authorization. Like the fact that his personal accounts show deposits from companies registered in the Cayman Islands. Like the fact that the Cross Trust, the one your wife is connected to, has been used as a conduit for money that can't be traced. She paused. I'm not stupid, Liam. I know my father arranged our engagement as a business merger. I accepted it. I was prepared to make it work. But I'm not going to let Marcus Vance destroy my family's reputation while pretending to be my future husband. I studied her. In the past life, Sophia had tried to warn me. She had seen the cracks in Marcus' armor long before I did. But I had been too blind, too trusting to listen. This time I was ready to hear her. You're right to be concerned, I said slowly. Marcus is involved in things that go beyond financial mismanagement. He's running an operation through Vance Chemical Industries that involves international shipments of controlled substances. Her face went pale. How do you know? Because I've been investigating him since the day he swapped our fiancés. She stared at me. You've been planning this. I've been preparing. For how long? Longer than you know. She was silent for a long moment, processing Elena. Is she part of this? She's investigating Marcus for reasons of her own. We're working together. Can I trust her? I trust her with my life. But you should make your own assessment. Sophia nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Access. Your father is on the board of Vance Holdings. He has access to financial records that I can't reach. And I need to know who else in the family is involved. You think your father knows? I think it's possible. Uncle Harold definitely knew. And he's dead now. Sophia's eyes widened. You're not suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm saying we can't afford to trust anyone until we know the full picture. She took a deep breath. I'll talk to my father. I'll get you the records you need. Thank you, Sophia. Don't thank me yet if we're going to bring down Marcus Vance. I need to know that you're not going to back out halfway. I've seen too many men start a fight and then run when it gets dangerous. I met her gaze. I've already died once because of Marcus. I'm not going to let him kill me again. She didn't understand what I meant, but she saw the truth in my eyes. Then we have a deal. We shook hands across the table. Her grip was firm. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a new energy. I had an ally in the Blackwood camp. And Sophia Blackwood was not someone to underestimate that afternoon. I called Jake. I need you to look into something else. Uncle Harold Vance's death. The official cause was heart attack. But I want to know if there was any investigation. You think he was murdered. I think Marcus has a habit of removing obstacles. And Uncle Harold was the obstacle that knew too much. I'll make some calls quietly. The pieces were falling into place. But I knew Marcus wouldn't stay complacent forever. He had already sensed that something was off. And a cornered predator was the most dangerous kind. That night, Elena and I worked late, cross-referencing the data from Marcus with the shipping records from Vance Chemical. The picture that emerged was staggering. Marcus hadn't just been running a side operation. He had built an entire parallel economy within Vance Holdings. The chemical shipments, the shell companies, the laundered money, the forged documents. It was a multimillion-dollar criminal enterprise, all operating under the nose of New York's most respected business family. He's been doing this for 6 years, Elena said, her voice barely a whisper since before Uncle Harold died. And no one noticed. He was careful. He used the family's reputation as cover. Who would suspect Marcus Vance, the golden boy of New York society? I looked at the evidence spread across the table. It was enough to put Marcus away for decades, but it wasn't enough to protect me from the trap he had set. The fraudulent invoices were already in the system, waiting to be discovered. If the auditors flagged them before I could expose Marcus, I would be the one arrested. Not him. We need to move faster, I said. We need to force Marcus into a mistake that can't be covered up. How? I need to think. I walked to the window and stared out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Marcus was planning his next move, and I had to be 3 steps ahead. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. It was a routine quarterly review, but I knew Marcus had plans for it. I had been reading his thoughts carefully over the past week, picking up fragments during chance encounters. The auditors will flag the cross-trust next month. But I need Liam's signature on the Meridian Holdings transfer first. If he signs it, the link is official. He's trapped. The Meridian Holdings transfer. That was the trap. If I signed it, I would be legally connected to the money laundering operation. If I refused, Marcus would claim I was obstructing legitimate business. Either way, he would have leverage. But I had a counter move. I needed to intercept the transfer documents before they reached my desk on Monday morning. I arrived at the office early. Marcus wasn't in yet. I walked past his assistant, Margaret, with a friendly nod. Marcus asked me to review the Meridian Holdings proposal before the board meeting. I said, "Do you have the draft?" Margaret hesitated. "I wasn't told about any draft. He mentioned it yesterday. Maybe he forgot to tell you." I'll check his office before she could object. I walked into Marcus's office. The safe was still locked. I hadn't been caught from my previous visit. I moved quickly, searching his desk. The transfer documents were in the top drawer. I read them carefully. They were exactly as I expected. A proposal to transfer funds from the Cross Trust to Meridian Holdings with spaces for my signature as trustee. The document was backdated, making it appear that I had been managing the trust for months. I photographed the documents with my phone, then replaced them exactly as I found them. I had the evidence of the forgery attempt, but I needed more. I needed to catch Marcus in the act of presenting the documents to the board. That afternoon, I met Jake at a coffee shop near his office. "I need you to bug Marcus's office," I said. "Audio only. I need to know everything he's saying to everyone." "That's illegal, Liam." "So is what he's doing." Jake sighed. "Give me 48 hours. The board meeting began at 10 on Tuesday morning. The conference room on the 45th floor was filled with suits and serious faces. My father sat at the head of the table, Alexander Blackwood to his right. Marcus sat across from me, radiating confidence. I could feel his thoughts buzzing beneath the surface even without touching him. By the end of this meeting, Liam will be tied to Meridian Holdings. The trap is set. All I have to do is spring it. The meeting proceeded through the usual agenda. Quarterly results, market analysis, strategic planning. Marcus presented his reports with polished professionalism, fielding questions with ease. Then came the item labeled trust and portfolio realignment. Marcus nodded at me. "Liam, as you know, the Cross Trust has been under review. I'd like to propose a realignment of its assets to improve returns. The Meridian Holdings Fund has shown consistent growth, and I believe it would be a beneficial move." He slid a document across the table. I looked at it but didn't touch it. "Meridian Holdings," I said slowly. "That's a fund I'm not familiar with. It's a private equity fund focused on emerging markets. One of our more successful investments. And who manages it? An external firm. Very reputable." I picked up the document. I didn't need to read it. I had already seen it. But I made a show of examining it carefully. Then I set it down. "I have concerns about this proposal," I said. The room went quiet. Marcus' smile tightened. "What concerns?" "The Meridian Holdings Fund has been flagged in an internal audit as having incomplete financial disclosures. There are questions about the source of its initial capital, and the fund's registered address is a P.O. box in the Cayman Islands." My father's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I've been reviewing the Cross Trust's financials since it was assigned to me, and I found several transactions that connect to Meridian Holdings. Transactions that weren't authorized by the Trust's original charter." Marcus' voice was cold. "You're new to the Trust, Liam. I've been managing it on behalf of the family for years. These transactions are standard practice. Standard practice to transfer money to an unregistered offshore fund. The fund is registered in the Cayman Islands where disclosure requirements are minimal." My father spoke. Marcus explained. Marcus' composure cracked. He hadn't expected me to push back. "It's a legitimate investment strategy. We use Meridian to diversify the Trust's holdings. Then you won't mind releasing their audited financials," I said, just to put everyone's mind at ease. The trap had failed. Marcus knew it. I could see the calculation in his eyes. The reassessment. He knows. He knows about Meridian. How? Who told him? "Elena. I'll deal with her later. Right now, I need to contain this. I'll have the financials sent to you by the end of the week." Marcus said, his voice tight. Thank you. That would be very helpful. I picked up my pen and made a note on my pad. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. After the meeting, Alexander Blackwood caught me in the hallway. That was an interesting gambit. Liam, I don't know what you mean, sir. You asked about Meridian Holdings at a public board meeting. You put your brother on the spot. That's either very brave or very foolish. Maybe a bit of both. Blackwood studied me. Sophia mentioned you've been asking questions. She seems to think you're on the right side of this. I'm on my side, and I think your side aligns with mine. He nodded slowly. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, I expect to see it soon. You will. He walked away, leaving me alone in the hallway. I had taken a significant risk. I had revealed my hand to Marcus, but I had also showed him that I was no longer the passive younger brother he could manipulate. The game had changed and Marcus knew it. That night, Jake sent me a message. Office is wired. Audio feed is live. I opened a secure connection on my laptop and listened. Marcus was in his office alone, pacing. I heard his voice, low and furious. He knows. He knows about Meridian. He knows about the trust. Who talked? Was it Sophia? Elena? Someone else? Phone rang. He answered. Yes. The shipment is on schedule. Friday night. Trenton Warehouse loading Dock 3. No, my brother won't be a problem. I'll handle it. The call ended. I stared at the screen. Friday night. Trenton Warehouse. The shipment. Marcus was moving the chemical product out of the country on Friday, and I had 3 days to stop it. Elena cornered me in the study the morning after I intercepted Marcus' call. Her eyes were sharp, her posture coiled with tension. I need to tell you the truth. All of it. I sat down my coffee. I'm listening. My client. His name is Cheney. He's a billionaire from Hong Kong. Former intelligence officer for the Chinese government. His daughter, May, died 2 years ago in Vancouver from a drug overdose. Her voice was steady, but there was pain beneath it. The drug was laced with a chemical called PMK glycidate, a precursor used in the production of ecstasy. It was manufactured by Vance Chemical Industries and sold through a network of intermediaries. Man never knew she was taking a contaminated product. She thought she was buying clean pills at a club. She died 12 hours later. I sat down across from her. I'm sorry, I didn't know her, but I've read her file. She was 23. She was studying art history at UBC. She had a boyfriend, a cat, and a future. Elena's jaw tightened. Mr. Chun has spent the last 2 years and $15 million trying to trace the source of that chemical. He hired me 8 months ago. My job was to find the person responsible and gather enough evidence to destroy them. And you found Marcus. I found the supply chain. Marcus is the end point. The money flows to him. The decisions are made by him. He may not be the one mixing the chemicals or packing the shipments, but he's the one who built the machine that makes it possible. She leaned forward. Mr. Chun wants Marcus destroyed. Not arrested. Not prosecuted. Destroyed. He wants him to lose everything. His wealth. His reputation. His freedom. His family. He wants him to spend the rest of his life in a cell, knowing that his empire crumbled because of one girl he never met. The intensity in her voice was startling. You care about this? I said more than just professionally. She was silent for a long moment. McCann was my roommate at Georgetown. We were best friends. She was going to be the maid of honor at my wedding someday. The confession hit me like a physical blow. Elena, I didn't know. No one knows. Mr. Chin hired me because I had the skills and the motivation. I studied international relations. I did a tour with a corporate intelligence firm. I knew how to trace money, but more than that, I wanted to find the people who killed May. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. So yes, Liam, I care about this. I care about it more than anything. And now that you know everything, you need to decide. Are you in this all the way, or are you going to back out and let Marcus destroy you? I reached out and took her hand. Her thoughts surged through me raw and unfiltered. Please, please don't be like everyone else. Please be the one person who doesn't let me down. I'm in, I said. All the way. She squeezed my hand back for the first time. There was no calculation in her eyes. Just trust the shipment was scheduled for Friday night. Marcus had mentioned the Trenton warehouse loading Dock 3. I knew the location. It was advanced chemical storage facility on the outskirts of the city. A nondescript building surrounded by chain-link fences and security lights. Elena and I spent Thursday planning. We couldn't call the police without concrete evidence of what was in the shipment. We would look like we were making false accusations. We couldn't confront Marcus directly. He would just deny everything and destroy the evidence. We needed to catch him in the act with witnesses. The shipping manifest will specify the contents. Elena said, if we can get a copy of that manifest and match it to the actual cargo, we'll have proof of illegal export. But we need someone credible to witness the inspection. What about Alexander Blackwood? He has connections with federal law enforcement. Too obvious. Marcus would know immediately that we were behind it. Elena paced the room. What about a reporter? Someone who covers financial crime. They'd need a warrant to inspect the shipment. And we can't get a warrant without evidence. Then we manufacture evidence. I looked at her sharply. What do you mean? We go to the warehouse tonight. We photograph the shipment before it leaves. We document the serial numbers on the chemical drums. And then we use that documentation to get a warrant. Breaking into a Vank chemical warehouse is significantly more dangerous than breaking into the records room. Which is why you're not coming. I'll do it alone. No, Liam. No. If you're caught alone, Marcus will destroy you if we're caught together. We can at least corroborate each other's story. She studied me. He's not going to let me do this alone. Stubborn, but useful. Fine. We go together. We drove to Trenton at midnight. The warehouse was dark. The only light coming from security lamps mounted on the corners of the building. A chain-link fence topped with barbed wire surrounded the perimeter. A guard shack stood at the entrance, but it was empty. Marcus had minimized security to avoid attention. We parked 4 miles away and approached on foot. I used bolt cutters from the trunk to cut a gap in the fence large enough to slip through. The gravel crunched beneath our feet as we moved toward the loading dock. The main door was locked, but I had memorized the security codes from Marcus' thoughts. I punched in the code I had extracted from his subconscious. The lock clicked. We slipped inside. The warehouse was cavernous, filled with rows of pallets stacked with industrial drums. Forklifts sat idle in the aisles. The air smelled of chemicals and dust. We found loading dock 3 at the rear of the building. A truck was already backed into the dock. Its cargo doors open. We climbed onto the dock and shone our flashlights inside. The truck was loaded with dozens of identical drums, each marked with warning labels and serial numbers. I photographed everything: the truck license plate, the drum labels, the serial numbers, the shipping manifest that had been left on a clipboard near the dock door. Elena took video, narrating quietly as she recorded. And then we heard it. An engine, headlights sweeping across the warehouse walls. Another vehicle pulling into the lot. Marcus here at 1 in the morning. He's early. Elena whispered. We need to hide. We scrambled off the dock and ducked behind a stack of pallets. Footsteps echoed through the warehouse. I heard Marcus' voice accompanied by another man's. Want this loaded and out by dawn. The customs agent in Newark has been paid off. Once it clears, it's untraceable. The other voice spoke. It was the silver-haired man from the gala. And your brother. Did you handle him? Not yet, but I will after this shipment is safely out of the country. You're running out of time. Marcus, my patience is not infinite. They stopped near loading dock 3. I held my breath. If they walked 10 feet to the left, they would see us. Everything is in order, Marcus said. The manifest is clean. The cargo is labeled as industrial solvents. No one will question it. They better not for your sake. The silver-haired man's voice was ice. If this shipment fails, I will hold you personally responsible. And I assure you, the consequences will be severe. Marcus' voice was tight. It won't fail. See that it doesn't. The footsteps retreated. The warehouse door slammed shut. The engine started and faded into the distance. Elena and I stayed hidden for a full 5 minutes before I dared to move. That was too close. I breathed. But we got what we needed. We slipped out through the fence and drove back to the city in silence. Our cameras full of evidence that could bring down Marcus Vance. Marcus struck back the next morning. I woke to find my phone flooded with notifications. News alerts, emails, text messages. The headline read, Vance Holdings heir under investigation for trust fund irregularities. The article was detailed, citing internal documents that showed suspicious transactions in the cross-trust. It painted me as the mastermind of a scheme to defraud the trust of millions. Marcus had moved his timeline up. He had leaked the documents to the press before I could present my evidence. Now the world thought I was the criminal. My father called at 7 in the morning. His voice was cold. Get to my office now. I dressed quickly, my mind racing. Elena was already awake, reading the same articles on her phone. This is bad, she said. He's controlling the narrative. I know, but I have something he doesn't expect. What? I smiled grimly. The truth. My father's office felt smaller than usual. The wall seemed to close in as I sat across from his massive desk. He didn't offer me coffee. He didn't offer me a seat. I took one anyway. Explain, he said. The articles are wrong. I said calmly. The cross-trust transactions you see there have been fabricated. Someone forged the documents to make it look like I was embezzling funds. And who would do that? Marcus. My father's face didn't change, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt or recognition. Couldn't tell. You're accusing your brother of framing you. I'm stating a fact. He's been running an illegal operation through Vance Chemical Industries for years. He uses the foundation and the cross-trust to launder money. When I started investigating, he decided to frame me for his crimes. Do you have evidence? I have enough to put him in prison for the rest of his life. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photographs from the warehouse. The chemical drums, the shipping manifest, Marcus' signature on the loading documents. My father studied the images in silence. His face remained unreadable. Where did you get these? I took them myself. Last night at the Trenton warehouse. You broke into a company facility. I did what I had to do to save myself. He set the phone down and looked at me for a long moment. He didn't speak. If what you're saying is true, then Marcus has committed serious crimes. Federal crimes. Crimes that could destroy this company and this family. I know, and you intend to expose him. I intend to survive. If exposing him is what it takes, then yes. My father leaned back in his chair. He looked older than I had ever seen him. I've known about Marcus' activities for years. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. What? Not the details. Not the chemical shipments. But I knew he was running money through offshore accounts. I suspected he was involved in something illegal. I chose not to investigate. Because he was my heir. Because admitting that Marcus was a criminal meant admitting that I had failed as a father and as a CEO. It was easier to look the other way. His voice was bitter. I convinced myself that whatever he was doing, it was small, that he would grow out of it, that I could manage the fallout when the time came. And now you've brought me evidence I can't ignore. He picked up my phone again. If I give this to the authorities, Marcus goes to prison. The company goes through a scandal. The Vance name becomes synonymous with corruption. And if you don't, I go to prison for his crimes. My father looked at me, and in that moment I saw something I had never seen in his eyes before. Respect. You're not the son I thought you were. Liam, I know you're smarter than I gave you credit for. You're braver. He stood and walked to the window. I'll call the district attorney. I'll give him everything we have. But I need you to understand something. This will destroy the family. Your mother will never forgive either of us. Marcus will fight back with everything he has. And there's no guarantee that justice will prevail. I understand. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my past life. The crash. The betrayal. The death. I've been prepared for a long time. I left my father's office feeling hollow. I had won a battle. My father was on my side. But the war was about to get uglier. And Marcus still had one more move to make. That evening, Elena met me at the penthouse. She looked shaken. Your father called the DA. They're opening an investigation. I know, but Marcus is gone. He left the office this afternoon and didn't come back. Security says he cleaned out his personal safe and left. My blood ran cold. He's running or he's planning something. something we haven't anticipated. I thought about the car crash. In the past life, Marcus had killed me with a car crash here now in this timeline. That same crash was waiting for me. We need to be careful, I said. Marcus is cornered and cornered men do desperate things. Elena nodded slowly. What do? We wait and we watch because he's going to make a mistake, and when he does, we'll be ready. I didn't tell her about my fear. I didn't tell her that I had already lived through Marcus' final move once. But I knew it was coming, and this time I was going to survive it. 2 days after Marcus disappeared, Elena found a letter in her mailbox. It was hand-delivered. No return address printed on plain paper, but the content stopped her cold. She brought it to me, her hands trembling. Read this. I took the letter. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, and the signature at the bottom made my blood run cold. Victor Cross * Elena. If you're reading this, it means I'm still alive, which I suspect will be as much a surprise to you as it is to me. I've been watching you from the shadows. I know what you're doing with Liam Vance. And I know why. I was the one who gave Mr. Chin your name. I was the one who told him you would be the perfect person to investigate the Vance family because I knew you would follow the truth wherever it led, and because I knew that the truth would eventually lead back to me. Your father is not the man you think I am. I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. I worked with Harold Vance for years building the financial infrastructure that Marcus now uses for his illegal operations. I thought I was building a legitimate business. I was wrong. When I discovered the truth, Harold tried to have me killed. I faked my death and went underground. But I've been gathering evidence ever since. Evidence that I'm ready to share with you now. Come to the address below alone. Bring only what you can carry. I'll explain everything. Victor Cross * Elena's face was pale. He's alive. My father is alive, and he's been watching us. He fed my name to Mr. Chun. He set this whole investigation in motion. She looked up, her eyes wet. I thought he was dead. I mourned him for 5 years. I thought he was dead. I put my hand on her shoulder. Her thoughts flooded in. Torrent of emotion. How could he do this? How could he let me believe he was dead? All those years of grief, of wondering, of hating him for leaving, and he was watching the whole time. We need to go, I said. We need to hear what he has to say. The address led us to a small house in Staten Island, set back from the road behind a wall of overgrown hedges. It was the kind of house that was designed to be invisible. No number on the mailbox, no name on the gate. We parked a block away and approached on foot. Elena knocked on the door. It swung open, revealing a man I recognized from the photograph in Elena's study. Victor Cross was thinner than his old photos, his hair grayer, his face lined with years of hiding, but his eyes were sharp, watchful, intelligent. Elena, his voice cracked. You came. Don't, she said, her voice hard. Don't act like this is a happy reunion. You let me think you were dead for 5 years. I know, and I'm sorry, but if I had told you the truth, you would have been in danger. I was protecting you by lying to me, by keeping you out of the crossfire. He looked at me. You must be Liam Vance. I've heard a lot about you. I wish I could say the same. He smiled grimly. Come inside. We have a lot to discuss. The house was sparsely furnished. Clearly a safe house rather than a home. Victor led us to a small study lined with filing cabinets and computer equipment. He gestured for us to sit. I've been gathering evidence against Harold Vance and your brother for 5 years. He began. Harold was the architect of the entire operation. He set up the shell companies, the offshore accounts, the supply chain. He was the one who connected Vance Chemical to the drug manufacturing network. But Harold died 5 years ago. I said officially, yes. In reality, Harold Vance is still alive. Elena and I exchanged a stunned look. What? He faked his death just as I did, but for different reasons. Harold faked his death because he knew the investigation was closing in on him. He let everyone believe he was dead, then assumed a new identity and continued running the operation from the shadows. Marcus knows. Marcus thinks Harold is dead. He's been running the operation alone for the last 5 years, believing he inherited the empire. But Harold has been pulling the strings the entire time. The shipments, the money laundering, the accounts. Harold controls it all from a secure location overseas. Victor pulled a folder from his desk. I have proof. Bank records, wire transfers, encrypted communications. Everything you need to expose not just Marcus, but the man who built the entire machine. I took the folder and opened it. The documents inside were meticulous account numbers, dates, signatures, communications between Harold Vance and intermediaries around the world. It was the complete picture. Why are you giving us this? Elena asked, her voice wary. Because I owe you, Victor said, looking at his daughter. I owe you for the years I stole from you. I owe you for the grief I put you through. And I owe it to McCann, whose life was cut short by the machine I helped build. He paused. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to make things right. Elena was silent for a long moment. Then she stood. We'll use the evidence. But I'm not ready to forgive you. Victor nodded, his face heavy with regret. I understand. Where is Harold now? I asked. Macau. He operates out of a casino resort called the Grand Emperor. He's been living there under the name Charles Wong. I closed the folder. Then that's where we need to go. Elena looked at me sharply. We can't just fly to Macau. We can if we want to end this permanently. If Harold is still pulling strings, then putting Marcus in prison won't stop the operation. The machine will just keep running with a new operator. She considered this. How do we get there without Marcus or Harold knowing? We don't go ourselves. We send someone we trust. Jake. I pulled out my phone and called him. Jake, I need you to book a flight to Hong Kong tonight. A pause. Hong Kong. I'll explain when you land. And Jake, be careful. The man you're looking for is dangerous. When am I not careful? The pieces were coming together. The conspiracy was deeper than I had ever imagined. But with Victor Cross's evidence and Jake's legwork, we had a path to victory. The question was whether we could follow it before Marcus made his final move. The family dinner was my father's idea. We need to present a united front, he had said. The press is circling. The DA is investigating. If we're seen fighting among ourselves, the vultures will pick us apart. I knew it was a mistake. Marcus was still missing. But my father insisted that we gather the family together. Him, my mother, Sophia, Elena, and myself. It will show that the Vance family is still strong, he said. I couldn't argue without revealing how much I knew, so I agreed. The dinner was held at the Westchester estate, the same mansion where Marcus had announced the fiancé swap. The irony was not lost on me. We gathered in the formal dining room, a cavernous space with a crystal chandelier and portraits of Vance ancestors lining the walls. My mother sat at the far end of the table, her expression tight, her champagne glass never empty. Sophia sat beside Elena, the two women exchanging cautious glances. My father sat at the head, his face carved from stone. And then the door opened and Marcus walked in. I felt the air leave the room. He was dressed impeccably as always, his hair perfect, his smile confident, as if he hadn't disappeared for 3 days, as if the investigation into his crimes wasn't looming over his head. Sorry I'm late, he said, taking his seat. I had some business to attend to. My father's voice was cold. You've been absent from the office for 3 days. The board is concerned. The board doesn't need to be concerned. I was handling a personal matter. His eyes met mine across the table. I know what you've been doing, little brother. I know about the warehouse. I know about Victor Cross. I know about everything, and I've prepared a response. I felt a chill run down my spine. Dinner was served. The conversation was stilted, forced. My mother talked about the weather. My father discussed quarterly projections. Sophia asked polite questions about Elena's consulting work. And Marcus watched me the entire time. He watched me. After the main course, Marcus stood and raised his glass. I'd like to make a toast to family, to loyalty, and to the truth. He turned to look at me. Liam, I owe you an apology. I've been a terrible brother. I've been selfish, competitive, and I've let my ambition get the better of me. But I want to make things right. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. I have here a document that proves my involvement in the Crossrust irregularities. A full confession. I'm prepared to give it to the DA tomorrow and accept the consequences. Everyone at the table stared at him. My mother gasped. My father's face went pale. But I felt no relief because I could hear his thoughts. Fake confession signed by a dead man. When the DA investigates, it will lead to an empty trail. And by the time they realize it's a forgery, I'll be gone with the money, with everything. And Liam will be left holding the bag. He was playing me, playing everyone. The confession was a decoy designed to buy him time to escape. I stood slowly. That's very noble of you, Marcus, but I have something to say, too. I pulled out my phone. I have a recording from a conversation you had at the charity gala with a man whose voice I didn't recognize at the time. But now I do. I pressed play. The silver-haired man's voice filled the room. The shipment needs to leave next week. Marcus' voice. It will. The charity will handle the routing. And your brother. He's not a threat. Trust me. I don't trust anyone. That's why I'm still alive. Handle him or I will. The room was silent. My mother's hand covered her mouth. My father's face was ashen. Marcus' composure cracked. Where did you get that? From your own recording device. You've been recording everyone. Marcus, including yourself. I turned to my father. I have more evidence of chemical shipments, money laundering, forged documents, and a statement from Victor Cross, confirming that the entire operation was built by Uncle Harold and passed to Marcus after his fake death. My father's voice was barely a whisper. Harold is alive. Yes. And Marcus has been working with his network to continue the operation. Marcus' face contorted with rage. You can't prove any of this. I already have. The DA has copies of everything. The dinner collapsed into chaos. My mother was crying. Sophia was on her phone calling her father. My father was shouting at Marcus, demanding explanations. And Marcus was staring at me with pure, undiluted hatred. This isn't over. He hissed. Yes, it is. You think you've won. You've destroyed the family. You've destroyed everything father built. And for what? Revenge. Justice. You're no better than me. I met his gaze. I'm not trying to be better than you. I'm trying to survive and I won. He lunged at me across the table. Dishes crashed. Glasses shattered. My mother screamed. Security guards rushed in and pulled him off me. I stood there, blood trickling from a cut on my cheek where a piece of broken glass had caught me, and watched. As Marcus was dragged out of the dining room, my father looked at me. His eyes were hollow. You've won. Liam, I hope it was worth it. I didn't answer. There was no victory in this moment, only the grim satisfaction of survival. Elena came to my side and took my hand. Her thoughts were warm, supportive. You did it. It's almost over. I held her hand and let myself breathe. Almost over. But I knew Marcus hadn't played his last card. The car crash from my past life was still waiting for me somewhere, and I had to survive it one more time. The DA's office moved quickly. Within 48 hours of the family dinner, an arrest warrant was issued for Marcus Vance. Charges included money laundering, fraud, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, and attempted murder. The attempted murder charge came from Jake's investigation into Uncle Harold's death. Marcus hadn't just forged Harold's signature. He had tried to kill him. The failed assassination attempt had driven Harold into hiding. But Marcus had kept the operation running. Believing his uncle dead, the police found Marcus at a private airstrip in New Jersey, trying to flee the country on a charter jet. He was arrested without resistance. The news broke across every major outlet. The fall of the Vance Golden Boy was front-page news for 3 consecutive days. Stock and Vance holdings plummeted. The board called emergency meetings. My father announced he was stepping down as chairman, citing health reasons. And in the middle of the chaos, Elena and I sat in our penthouse watching the news coverage on a muted television. He's done, she said. He's really done. Not yet. There's still the trial and Harold is still out there. Jake is in Macau. He'll find him. I nodded, but I felt uneasy. Marcus' arrest had been too clean. He had gone quietly without the dramatic escape I had expected from the past life. It didn't fit. Marcus was a fighter. He wouldn't go down without one last desperate move. I knew what that move was. The car crash in the past life. It had come after the court hearing where I was convicted. Here in this timeline, the hearing was scheduled for next week. But would Marcus wait or would he strike earlier knowing he had nothing left to lose? I made a decision. I wasn't going to be a sitting target. I called my father. I need a car. Not from the Vance fleet. Something untraceable. Because Marcus isn't done. And I'm not going to let him finish what he started. My father didn't argue. An hour later, a nondescript sedan was delivered to the penthouse garage. I swapped my usual car for it, parking the Range Rover in the garage and leaving the sedan in its place. I didn't tell anyone about the swap. Not even Elena. The less she knew, the safer she would be. 2 days later, I was driving home from the office when I saw the headlights. A black SUV had been following me for 3 blocks, keeping its distance, but never losing me. I tested it. 2 left turns, a right, a circle around the block. The SUV followed. My pulse quickened. This was it. Marcus' final move. I changed course, heading not toward the penthouse, but toward the industrial district near the waterfront. Fewer cameras, fewer witnesses. It was a risk, but I wanted to draw them away from populated areas. The SUV accelerated. So did I. The streets were dark, lined with warehouses and empty lots. I pushed the sedan to 60, 70 miles per hour. The SUV stayed on my tail, its headlights bright in my rearview mirror. And then I saw it. A truck parked at an intersection ahead, its lights off, waiting. I knew what was coming in the past life. The truck had pulled out in front of me at the last second, forcing me to swerve into oncoming traffic here. In this timeline, I was ready. I slowed just enough to let the SUV close the gap. Then, at the last second, I wrenched the wheel to the right, sending the sedan screeching onto a side street. The SUV tried to follow, but the truck had already pulled out, blocking the intersection, blocking the SUV. I heard the crash, metal on metal, glass shattering. I pulled over and got out, my legs shaking. The SUV had T-boned the truck. The driver of the truck was climbing out, dazed, but alive. The SUV's airbags had deployed. I walked toward it, my heart hammering. The driver's door opened, and Marcus stepped out. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, his suit torn, his eyes wild with fury. "You," he spat. "You knew." "I knew how. How could you possibly? I've always known. Marcus, I've known everything. Every plan, every scheme, every lie." He stared at me, his face twisted with rage and confusion. "Who told you?" "Elena." "Father." "Who?" I walked closer, stopping a few feet from him. The street was empty. The crash had drawn no attention. It was just the 2 of us standing in the darkness, the wreckage of his final place steaming behind him. "No one told me," I said. "I saw it. I lived it. You killed me once. Marcus in another life." His eyes narrowed. "You're insane. Maybe, but I'm also holding every piece of evidence needed to put you away for the rest of your life. The chemical shipments, the forged documents, the attempt on my life tonight. It's all there in the hands of the DA. You can't prove anything. I already have." Sirens sounded in the distance. Police. Someone must have reported the crash. Marcus looked around, calculating his options. There were none. He was trapped. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low. "It is. You just don't know it yet." The police arrived. They found Marcus standing in the middle of the street, his hands at his sides, his face a mask of defeat. They arrested him without resistance. I gave my statement, offered my evidence, watched as Marcus was put into the back of a patrol car. As they drove away, he turned and looked at me through the window. His lips moved. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew what he said. "You should have died." I smiled. "I already did. And I came back." The car disappeared into the night. I stood alone on the empty street, the sirens fading, the wreckage smoking in the darkness. And I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 lifetimes. Peace. 3 months later, the trial was over. Marcus Vance was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 25 years to life in a federal penitentiary. The judge called his crimes a staggering betrayal of family, trust, and the law. The media coverage was relentless, but gradually the story faded from the front pages. The Vance empire had crumbled. My father resigned as chairman, sold most of the family's holdings, and retreated to the Westchester estate to live out his days in quiet disgrace. My mother divorced him a month after the trial and moved to Paris. The family I had grown up with was gone, scattered by the storm Marcus had created. But out of the ashes, something new was growing. I was named interim CEO of what remained of Vance Holdings, a smaller, leaner company stripped of its criminal enterprises. The board had been cleaned out, replaced by independent directors who had no ties to Marcus' operation. The first thing I did was shut down Vance Chemical Industries. The second was establish a victims fund for the families affected by the drug trade the company had enabled. I worked with Mr. Chun to ensure that the fund was properly managed and that every dollar went to those who had suffered. Mr. Chun himself came to New York for the announcement. He was a tall man, silver-haired with eyes that had seen too much. He shook my hand and said, "May would have appreciated what you've done." It was the closest thing to thanks I would ever get from him. Elena and I stood on the balcony of the penthouse looking out at the city skyline. The autumn air was crisp, the lights of Manhattan glittering below us. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know. I've never gotten this far before." She looked at me. "In your old life, you said you died." "I did. And now you're here alive, free with Marcus in prison." "Yes." "Do you believe in second chances?" I turned to look at her. The woman I had married under false pretenses. The woman I had read thoughts from, strategized with, fought alongside. The woman who had become my partner in ways I had never expected. "I have to," I said. "I'm living one." She smiled. "So am I." We stood in silence for a long moment. Then she spoke again. "I found something today in the safe house. My father left a letter for me before he turned himself in." "He turned himself in?" "Yes. He's cooperating with the authorities in exchange for immunity. He'll be in witness protection for the rest of his life." She pulled an envelope from her jacket. "He wrote this for both of us." I took the letter and read it. Liam and Elena. "I won't pretend that I deserve your forgiveness. I don't. I spent years running from my mistakes, hiding from the consequences of my choices. But I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Both of you. You took a corrupt system and you tore it down. You exposed the truth and you did it together. That's more than I ever accomplished. Whatever happens to me, know that I'm grateful. Victor *. I folded the letter and handed it back to Elena. "Do you forgive him?" She considered the question. "Not yet, but maybe someday." She slipped the letter back into her jacket. "Are you going to be okay?" she asked. "I think so. For the first time in a long time. I think I will be good." She reached out and took my hand. Her thoughts drifted through me, warm and steady. "I don't know what happens next, but for the first time, I'm not afraid of the future because I'm not facing it alone." I squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Elena." "For what?" "For trusting me, for fighting with me, for not giving up." She laughed softly. "I could say the same to you." We stood there hand in hand, looking out at the city that had tried to destroy us both. The past was behind us. The future was uncertain. But for now, in this moment, we had each other, and that was enough. A few days later, I visited Marcus in prison. It was a maximum security facility upstate, gray and cold, surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers. They brought him into the visiting room in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed, his face thinner than I remembered. He sat across from me, the glass partition between us. "Come to gloat?" he asked. "No." "Then why are you here?" I leaned forward. "I wanted to see you to understand." "Understand what?" "Why you did it. Why you tried to destroy me." He laughed, a hollow sound. "You really don't get it, do you? It was never about you. It was about what you represented. The favorite son. The one who didn't have to fight for anything. Sophia. The company. Our father's approval. You were just handed everything while I had to claw for every scrap. Father never approved of me. He didn't have to. He didn't have a choice. The Blackwood merger was your ticket, and I couldn't let you have it. I studied him, the brother I had grown up with, the brother who had killed me in another life. He looked small now, diminished, stripped of the power and charisma that had once defined him. "There's one thing I still don't understand," I said. "How did you know?" he asked. "About the charity, the warehouse, the chemical shipments. How did you know everything?" I thought about telling him the truth about the rebirth, about the telepathy, about the thoughts I had read from his own mind. But I didn't because some secrets are worth keeping. I had help, I said simply, from people you underestimated. He stared at me, searching for something in my eyes. He didn't find it. I'll get out of here someday, he said. And when I do, I'll know you won't. You're in for 25 years, and even if you get out, there's nothing left for you. The company is gone. The money is gone. The family is gone. I stood. Goodbye, Marcus, Liam. I paused. How does it feel to win? I thought about it. The victory felt hollow in some ways. I had lost my family, my father's approval, the life I was supposed to live, but I had gained something, too. Freedom, truth, a future that I had chosen for myself. Feels like I'm finally alive, I said, and I walked out. The prison doors closed behind me. The autumn sunlight hit my face, warm and golden. Elena was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against the sedan. She smiled when she saw me. How was it? Closure. Good. Let's go home. We drove back to the city, the highway stretching before us, the sky clear and endless. I didn't look back. The past was behind me. The future was ahead. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I was ready to live it. Some secrets are worth keeping. Some second chances are worth more than revenge. The end. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.